started. So again, my name is Jessica Borza. I serve as the Executive Director of the Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition and am part of the Greater Oh-Penn Manufacturing Apprenticeship Network team. And we want to welcome you to our first webinar for employers that we're planning as part of a series to really help to facilitate communication with all of you who are involved with the apprenticeship project, to make sure that we're helping to facilitate communication, answer your questions, make sure that you have the information that you need to be successful. So before we dive in and talk about what's on the agenda for today, I think we can go around and do a round of introductions. So I'm just gonna go by way of the attendance list on the GoToMeeting, and I'll ask our team to start us off. So Vicki, then Sue, you want to introduce yourselves?
Good morning, I'm Vicki Thompson, and I am the project manager for the Greater Oh-Penn Manufacturing Apprenticeship Network.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Sue Watson, and I provide support to the project.
Thanks, guys. Alicia or Alicia?
Hi. It's Alicia and Sean here from ExecuTool.
Oh, very good. Thank you for joining us. How about Dale and Ginger?
Hi. Hi, we're both here.
Right. And you're with?
Star Manufacturing.
Oh, Star Manufacturing, sorry.
It's okay, I know, but everybody else doesn't. So Thank you, welcome, and good morning.
Good morning.
Let's go to Harold.
Yeah, this is Harold Heibach from PHP Diecast and Red Dog Industries. We're combined companies.
Yes, great. Thank you for being on the line. How about Marianne?
Hi, it's Marianne Ballett, the HR manager with the Brilex Group of Companies representing Brilex Industries today.
Thank you. And Mary Gray?
Hi, this is Mary. Excuse me. I'm the apprenticeship coordinator with Butech Bliss.
Thank you. And Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Schubert. I'm the HR manager at Wheatland 2 at the Warren facility. And then we are part of the Zeckelman Industries Group.
Perfect, thank you, welcome. And looks like, how about Ashley?
Hi, good morning, I'm Ashley Worley. I'm the operations manager with Area Tool and Manufacturing, and we're located in Meadville.
Good morning. Did I miss anyone? Okay, very good. Well, a great group, nice diverse group, I think, of different occupations, and some of you I know are part of our group-sponsored model, and some have your own individual models, so we'll be interested in hearing about that as we go through the morning, and hope that the information that we have will be helpful and beneficial to all of you. So the agenda, as you can see it on the screen, we'll first go through a little bit of background and purpose for why we decided to pull this webinar together today. And then we'll talk specifically about the subject that we chose for today, which is around the tracking of both the related technical instruction and the on-the-job training. Then we'll have plenty of time, as I said, for questions and answers. I think we can do that. We can take questions throughout the session, particularly if you'd like to just type them into the chat section of the GoToMeeting toolbox. We can take those as we go, and then we'll have time at the end. And then the other thing that we'd like to do today is hear from you about other topics, maybe questions that are on your mind, whether you're new to apprenticeships or are looking for other best practices. We are open to doing these kinds of webinars on a regular basis, and so we certainly would welcome any suggestions that you may have for future topics for future webinars. So be thinking about that, and we can come to that at the end. So we'll start off by, what we were thinking when we were pulling this together. And essentially we had, we've been doing this work. Our grant project is just ended its third year. So we really did a lot of development and planning work in the first couple years of the grant, but we saw a ton of activity in year 3 of the American Apprenticeship Initiative grant. And so with that, we have a lot of manufacturers who are new to this project, new to apprenticeships altogether, and others who are moving maybe from an older individual program to the group sponsored or a variety of situations. And so we really wanted to create an opportunity to just keep the lines of communication open. We consider this really a learning project where we can all learn from one another. And so we're really thinking about this as one way to create almost a learning community where, we may be able to share some best practices, provide you with some information, but we're also hopeful that you'll be able to bring some of your own experiences to the conversation and share with each other. And, we'll just say right off the bat, there may be some questions that come up. If we don't have the answers, then we can go back and get those answers and bring them back to you as well. So, this is your opportunity. Don't be shy about the questions that you have. And again, as you think about questions that are related to the topic today, other questions unrelated, but that, are on, top of mind for you at this moment, wherever you are with your apprenticeship program, and then topics that you really feel like you'd like to delve into more deeply. We also want to make sure that we're being proactive to make sure that, we're in compliance with record keeping and so forth, and so that you know what those expectations are, and we are supporting you and also helping with the collection and record keeping for those purposes. And then, of course, at the end of the day, what we're all about is providing the best opportunities for apprentices' success. So we want to make sure that this is a good experience for them, both in the classroom and on the job. And ultimately, it's a good experience for you as they're gaining skills and being able to move through your internal career pathways to provide you with an even higher skill level and greater levels of contributions on the job. So that's the idea. We know most of you or all of us, someone on our team knows all of you, but want to get to know you a little bit better and understand where you are and how we can support you in the process. So I'm going to turn it over to Vicki Thompson, who's going to talk through our topic for today. And as I said, she's going to talk to us about tracking, both for the related technical instruction piece, which is your classroom piece, as well as the on-the-job training piece, so that you are not only able to be in compliance, but I think even more importantly, that you're able to be on the same page with your apprentice and your training provider, and you're really making sure that that progress is being seen in the way that you expected it. So Vicki, do you want to pick it up and take it from here?
Sure, thank you. I thought I would start with some basics just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So as you remember, you all have your standards of apprenticeship, which actually spell out your apprenticeship program. So what your occupational focus is, how your company is going to select its apprentices, the type of training that's covered on the job and in the classroom, and then how you're going to evaluate your apprentices. So I just wanted to start with the basics. So you're either going to have a time-based or competency-based, and so we do have a mix on the phone. We have some people who are using a traditional individual apprenticeship program that is time or hour-based. So the apprentices move through their program based on the courses and the number of hours in those courses. And then we also have group-sponsored, which is the MVMC model, which is competency-based. So the apprentices move through the courses based on the competency. In this case, we use NIMS, but we also use the actual on-the-job training that an employer may have. So for instance, in welder fitter, we're using those types of observation and checklists. And then they also have the opportunity to move through their apprenticeship possibly a bit faster, moving and using a competency base because it is based on passing specific skills and tests. One of the things I wanted to mention is that sometimes it's helpful if you have a mentor toolkit. This is something that you can use to guide the apprenticeship program that you have in your place of business. So if you can assess and identify the sequence for training, that's what the types of things you're addressing in your standards as well. But allows you to set some realistic goals and expectations for the apprentices, and it gives you a better opportunity to be able to communicate that with the apprentices if you actually have a toolkit that you can look at and you could utilize. So what you'd want to do is identify and brief other experienced workers who could act as the trainers or the mentors. So they too should be involved from the beginning, understanding what the related technical instruction is, as well as the on-the-job training, so that they have a clear, full picture as to what expectations will be, and that will help both them and the apprentice as they move along to help that apprentice complete their apprenticeship program. So evaluating the performance and providing feedback is going to be very important from both your standpoint and the mentor standpoint as well. So just starting with some basics, what is RTI? Well, that is your related technical instruction, and that is what is provided for technical and academic competencies. So this applies to on the job, what it is that's happening, and then you're utilizing the theoretical piece that happens typically in a classroom, but there are those of you, some who use online training. Typically there's at least a little bit of lab instruction that's involved where the apprentices are going to learn the aspects of that skilled occupation. And this just supplements the on-the-job training so that once they learn that theoretical piece, they can come and actually experience it on the job. So you can see that there's a nice marriage between the two for the success of the apprentice. And typically, your related technical instruction, it's going to require 144 hours per year of that theoretical classroom or online training. What I've done here is I've actually put together a little slide to help you understand how important that employer RTI provider relationship is. I know that some of you are utilizing one specific education provider. I know some of you are doing a mix of online and classroom brick and mortar. But no matter what it is that you're utilizing, this is very important. It's very important that the employer actually have a relationship with the education provider. And that starts with day one, because we know that when you put your standards together, some type of relationship has typically already been established because you have an education provider that you have chosen who will be able to provide the courses that you need for your apprentice to be able to complete their program. So it's important that the employer contacts that provider and receives the schedule. It's very basic. It's the first thing you should probably think about when you're considering who it is you're going to put into your apprenticeship program and what it is they're going to need to be successful. So the employer needs to contact the provider and make sure they receive a schedule of when the specific courses for their apprenticeship program is going to be held. So they're going to then share that schedule with the apprentice, right? Open lines of communication so that the apprentice will understand what's going to be expected, when classes are going to be held, when they're going to be expected to be there, what the policy is for the employer as far as attendance and grades. And then the employer should also share that schedule with the mentor, the supervisor, for the on-the-job training piece. That's instrumental to making sure that there's good, clear communication so that then the mentor can understand what's happening in the classroom so that they can make sure that it bodes well with what it is that they're doing actually on the job when they're in the plant. The benefits of doing that, I'm sure there are many benefits. These are the first three that come to mind when we think about it. And one is that this allows that related technical instruction provider to know that they have a cohort. And what I mean by that is to know that they have enough students to be able to run their classes. So it's very important that employers at the beginning go to their provider that they're going to utilize. Once a provider knows that they have a cohort, they can do things like order supplies and books and that kind of thing, make sure that there's going to be enough material and that type of thing for any of the training that's going to happen. The apprentice then knows what courses are he or she are going to be required to attend so that they can make their schedules and make any arrangements that they have to as far as any of their personal responsibilities as well as their work responsibilities page with when things are going to occur. It also gives the employer an opportunity to know what to expect in terms of when reports will be provided on grades, attendance, invoicing, that kind of thing. So if at the very beginning there's a good solid relationship between the employer and the provider, there's an opportunity for things to run more smoothly. Things aren't always going to be perfect, but that's the opportunity to know that you have the relationship so that you can contact the provider if something does come up that makes things a little challenging. So when we talk about the RTI, the tracking itself of RTI, these are the kind of things, and this is the example that I wanted you to be able to look at. So the tracking of the RTI, in this example, we're utilizing the industrial technology maintenance, and what you can see is that the course hours are running right along here in this last column. So these are the kind of things that you're going to use to actually track your RTI. So you have the schedule, you know what the classes are. Now you can have an understanding as to when your apprentice is going to be learning what, and it allows you the opportunity to start tracking those things so that you have a clear indication as to what the apprentice is learning, so that you can make sure that it bodes well with what's happening on your floor in the plant with the mentor, the supervisor that's doing the on-the-job training piece. So this is just one example. All of you should have your schedules as far as what your employees through their apprenticeship program are learning. And so you should have something similar to this for whichever occupation your apprentice is in for their program. So you can see that for those of you using the group-sponsored model, you should know where the NIMS aligns with the RTI courses themselves. And for those in a traditional model, you can see also your course hours here as well. So typically in the group-sponsored model, we're going to include all of that. For you, those of you in individual models, you should have that information as well. But this is just an example, and I used it because I liked it because it has all of the hours in there, and it allows you an opportunity to see what it is your apprentices are learning, and that combined with your schedule, you should have a full picture. So when you look at what on-the-job training is, we're talking about the apprentices receiving the on-the-job training to experience the mentorship at the job site. And so they're actually looking at what is the full proficiency of that apprentice. Are they learning all the skills? How is that coming into play with what's happened with the RTI piece of it? And typically, you know, this is going to be based on some national industry standards that are then customized for whatever the particular employer need is. So for those of you on individual plans, that's what you've done, working with your state apprenticeship council. For those of you on the group sponsored plan, that's what MVMC did when it pulled the employers together so that they can agree upon what those standards should be. And typically this is going to be about 2,000 hours per year. So the way that you're going to, or one of the things that you can do to track that is individually, your programs that are based on the hours and the time, you're typically going to have some type of checklist that shows the proficiency as the apprentice is moving through their on-the-job training piece at your site. And if you're using the group-sponsored model, not only do you have that checklist, but you typically are going to have NIMS if you're using like the industrial maintenance or if you're using the machining. So one of the things that I wanted to show, and I'm going to flip here a little bit out of this PowerPoint, I'm going to show you something that NIMS uses that provides a really nice opportunity to be able to look at the way that you can put this together. So on your screen, you should see the credentialing achievement record. Now, if you have an individual program and you're not using NIMS, I still strongly suggest that if you don't have anything in place or you're looking for something to supplement what you're using, you can still use and look at NIMS. And those are things we can provide to you because you can alter these and you can customize them to whatever it is that works for you. So you can see that what they do is they actually provide this credentialing achievement record so that you can track what's happening with your on-the-job training. It goes through the directions on how to utilize that. But what's really nice is this examiner's checklist. And so your mentor or supervisor could be utilizing this while they're doing the on-the-job training. and it goes through and it takes every one of those competencies so that then the mentor can put when it was completed, they can put their initials, the apprentice can put their initials on it. The other thing that you can do is you can add an extra column to this and maybe have 3 areas that talked about their proficiency. So if they're just at a start out, if they're at a medium, you know, they've gone halfway through and you can see some achievement of it and some competency, but they haven't reached that full competency yet. And then once they've achieved the full competency. So I would recommend that you take something like this and add a column to it. I know many of you already have checklists that you use, and so you are keeping track of these competencies as they move along. But this one is pretty extensive, and it really goes through every single one of the competencies. And as I said, if this is something that you're interested in, even if you're not using NIMS, and you're doing an individual program, we'd be more than happy to share all of this with you so that then you can go ahead and create your own. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention so you could take a look at it and see that there are opportunities to actually utilize that tracking. I'm trying to get back here to the page I need all of you to be on. I'm having a little difficulty. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. This is my right-hand person here. She's helping me out. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to see that. The other thing that you need to make sure that you're keeping track of, in addition to your related technical instruction and as your apprentices are moving along and you're on the job training and your checklist, is to make sure that you're keeping track of the wage progression minimum. And so no matter if you're using the individual wage progression or you're using the group-sponsored model, you want to make sure that you're showing that minimum wage has to be is the minimum that can be the start. I know a number of you start at more than a minimum wage, and then you have to show how that's progressing as they move along in their program, so that at a minimum, at the end of it, they should be earning $16 an hour. And as I said, I know that most of you, if not all of you, are pretty close to that now. So the wage progression minimums that you have to show are going to be the same for individual or MVMC. They might not be starting in the same place, but they're all going to start out at least at minimum wage and then move through and be at a $16 an hour at the end of it, that progression. I want to talk a little bit about how this tracking of your RTI and the on-the-job training allows for both compliance and for reimbursement related to this grant. So the Department of Labor requires that you keep the files of all your apprenticeships and their related paperwork. If you're in the group-sponsored model, we were doing that for you, but it's also important that you have that information because it does relate to what your employees are doing and it has an HR task to it. So per apprentice, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of all of their files that have to do with RTI and on-the-job training for each one of your apprentices. And then when we talk about the grant itself and the reimbursement for the apprenticeship network, in order to get your reimbursement, and I'll go through the timeline on this in just a second, but you need to make sure that you have copies of your invoices from the RTI provider that you're using, any certificates that those apprentices have earned, and then you want to make sure that you have the payroll report that shows that the supervisor and or mentors are using. That's your backup documentation that shows your on-the-job training piece, as well as the apprentice's payroll report that shows the backup for any of that OJT that may be occurring on the job site. So the timeline for reimbursement, I wanted to explain that to those of you who may not be as familiar or haven't gone through a round of your reimbursement yet. The reimbursement is based on a 12-month process. So your first half of your reimbursement, so let's say that you came in on the grant reimbursement when you were receiving $4,000 per apprentice if it's a new apprenticeship program, or $2,000 on an apprenticeship program that you previously had established. What you're going to do is for the first half of that reimbursement, you're allowed to get reimbursed for half of it for that first 6 months. So once your apprentice has completed the first 6 months of their apprenticeship program, you can ask for half of that reimbursement amount. And then what you're going to do is you're going to show that through the documentation that I just mentioned. And this is all in your master agreement. So if you need to go back and look at your master agreement, You'll see all of this in here. And then you're going to, and you also get a reminder. Sue's going to be our reminder person. So after 6 months, she'll let you know that, it's time for you to send in for your first half of reimbursement. And then the second half is available after the 12th month. So once they've gone through their full year of apprenticeship, you can ask for that second half of your reimbursement. And again, Sue's going to send you a reminder. You're going to submit your invoices, payroll records, that kind of thing as backup for that reimbursement. So what happens beyond the apprenticeship network grant, both figuratively and literally? Well, there are a couple of things that are going to happen. First of all, you need to make sure that you're keeping those records beyond the end of this grant date. We know that the grant itself is over September 30th of 2020, but for all intents and purposes, for the grant and reimbursement and those kind of things, we'll probably be wrapping up those who want to apply for grants before the end of March of 2020. So record keeping is going to go beyond that because you need to keep your records basically forever. I mean, you have to, there's not a specific guideline on when you can be reviewed for compliance reasons with DOL. And so you want to keep your records and have those ready in case you are, I don't want to say audit because it's more of a compliance. They just want to make sure that you're keeping all of the records that you need to have for your apprentices. And so for those in the group sponsor model, MVMC is keeping track of all that. For those of you in the individual, you will need to keep track of those as well. So you want to make sure that you're submitting your apprenticeship milestone documentation to MVMC if you're in a group sponsor model, and you'll have track of that if you have an individual model. If you have to submit, excuse me, a cancellation because your apprentice is no longer in a program, we have a form that you're specifically to turn in. So if something should happen and an apprentice is not able to go on with their program, please notify either me or Sue so that we can get that cancellation form to you. That has to be recorded. That has to be recorded in the DOL system in Rapids, and so it's really important that we have that information. The MVMC group-sponsored model will continue beyond the grant. These are things that have already been accepted through the state apprenticeship council. So if you want to take advantage of a group-sponsored model beyond the grant, that is available for you to do. If you are interested in expansion of occupation beyond the grant based on demand and fund availability, that may be something that MVMC can do. But understand that if you're in the group-sponsored model, you are tied to MVMC as far as your apprenticeship is concerned, because we are responsible for all of that record keeping. And we would like to have the opportunity to expand what it is that we've done. But of course, like I say, it depends on how much demand there is and the fund availability. But as you know, MVMC has always worked to make sure that it's filling skills gaps, and that's what this apprenticeship program has been about from the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for a Q&A session. So if there are any of you who have questions, or if there's anything that showed up on the chat box there, we can go ahead and answer those.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat box, but I welcome anyone with questions just to go ahead and open up their mic and ask them verbally now. If there aren't questions right off the bat, I'm wondering, Mary Gray, you have been involved in apprenticeships for some time, so I consider you to be one of our resident experts. As you think about tracking of the related technical instruction and the on-the-job training, do you have any tips or tricks to share with people, or best practices that you've used at your company?
Well, as far as tracking the OJT hours, and I guess I'm speaking on right now just on the individual model, we use the logbooks that state of Ohio provides. But then I also have a spreadsheet that I keep on each one, that each month when they turn their book in to me to show me that they've filled it out and had their supervisor sign it, I load in, I make a new sheet for that month and bring over how many they've completed in each of the areas of the tasks that are listed in their book on their work schedule, and tell them how much they've completed in each one and then how much they have left in each one. As far as I guess I've been kind of confused on the group-sponsored model with the competency-based on how you wanted the time kept track of. But you're saying those checklists suffice, with just dating those checklists as they go? The ones that you showed from NIMS?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, making sure that you're keeping the dates on those as well, and then as your apprentice earns the NIMS credentials, turning those into us so that we have that as part of our record.
Okay. Because there's not going to be an actual number of hours that obviously that show up. It's just going to show that they met on that checklist, that they met whatever it is that that line item asks for. There's no place there to put how many hours it took to do that.
That's right. And the competency base, you're showing that they've actually met the competency, and so you're checking off as they actually move along and have mastered that competency.
Okay. Then the RTI hours, basically, I mean, you have the, we are, right now we're actually using 3 different methods for RTI right now. We're using online, and we're using 2 brick and mortar schools. But I don't keep track, monthly or however it goes at the end of each semester. And then at the end of each year, if they get, depending on how it's set up, if they get, they send a report as to what they've completed. I just use the hours that are set up at the very beginning for each section once they've completed it. I don't keep track of whether they've been there or how many actual hours they're going. I just use if they've completed the class, I use the number of hours that that the class was getting credit for. Does that make sense?
And it does make sense. So, and I think that's probably the more important point, especially for folks who are doing this for the first time, is you're still tracking when they're completing that course, so you know that they've completed, that subject, and then you know what the next course would be, in their overall plan, and are, keeping track of that and making sure that they're enrolled in that class with the particular training provider at each next step. I know there was a little confusion about that with a couple of our providers, because they each work a little bit differently. In some cases, we've got, a class full of just apprentices that are going kind of in lockstep in a cohort. And so it's pretty easy for the school to manage that. And they know that, all 9 apprentices are moving on to the next course, and they're going to do it all together. And in other cases, and I know Trumbull County, Trumbull Career and Technical Center is an example of this, they organize their RTI by courses, and they can plug apprentices in with non-apprentices, which works actually pretty well to keep the program going and classes full. Sure. But it really puts the onus on the employer to make sure that their individual is registered for each next course, because the school's not necessarily, mapping that out completely or following that. So we're in communication with them, but just an illustration of why it's important for, you as the employers to make sure that and are communicating with both the school and your apprentice about the next step in their next course. Thank you for sharing that. Are there other questions that maybe came up for you as Mary was talking, or that you've been thinking about?
Just another thing to throw out there. This is Mary again. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. If you're doing your own individual program and the state does come to audit, and that's why we were saying you have to keep a file on each apprentice. They do, it's random. They come generally anywhere from 2 to 5 years. They make an appointment ahead of time at your convenience. They come in and they sit down and they go through every single thing. They look to make sure that everything that you've stated in your standards has been done and documented. So if you, obviously with your wage progressions, your hours, communication, reviews with each apprentice at each milestone, all of their RTI certificates and all the classes that they've completed. So it is important to keep all that for each person.
Thank you, Mary. That's valuable information.
It's always good to hear from somebody who's been there and done that. And I think the audit is the state's way of ensuring quality, which we all know is important for this. So knowing what to expect with all of that is important as you're going into this. So I'm hoping that the silence means that everybody is comfortable with this, but I just want to pause one more time for questions. Did I hear a question there?
Yes, this is Ginger from STAR. Is there an actual audit checklist that I can find somewhere?
I can look back and see if I have one from the last time. They do send that to you, and they give you, when they call or contact you to say that it's time, they give you at least 60 days. They call quite a bit ahead of time, and they send you that audit checklist right then. And I'm not sure if it's the same every time. I'll have to look back on the last few. But yeah, I'd be glad to provide that if they don't have it at MVMC.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
We can make sure that gets sent out to everybody. Okay, well, if not any more questions on this topic, are there any other questions that are on your mind in general? This is, your time, as we said at the top of this. Anything else that you're curious about?
Yeah, hello, this is Harold Heibach.
Hey, Harold.
My question is for anybody else out there too. Is everybody meeting their quota or their needs for the amount of apprentices they would like to have? And if they are, how are they finding the young individuals to be apprentices, or any individuals that want to come in to be an apprentice? And because I know, like, between PHP and Red Dog, we're looking for apprentice toolmakers. And right now I have 2 apprentice toolmakers at PHP, and we have 3 at Red Dog. But now we're actually able to handle more apprentices right now, and we would definitely like to hire more. But getting individuals to want to come into an apprenticeship, and it's a good paying wage with great benefits, but how are we going to be able to get people to come into the apprenticeship programs? Maybe that'll be a topic for our next discussions.
Okay, I like that suggestion. I know that it's been a challenge that we've heard from other manufacturers too, you know, and using apprenticeship, you know, that angle, the mere fact that you have an apprenticeship as, you know, another way to attract candidates, it would be interesting to know. Does anybody have anything to share? Any success stories for how they've been able to attract any new apprentices? Okay.
Hi, this is Sherry.
Go ahead.
And what we've done here at Wheatland at the Warren plant is we did an internal posting. We have about 150 hourly employees here, and we used it as an opportunity for the you know, the machine operators or somebody that wants to get into kind of another, you know, they're done working on the floor as far as operating, they want to get into the nuts and bolts of how it works. So because we have two different types of apprentices, we have general maintenance, mechanical, and then we have e-techs. And we only could take 4, and I could have had a lot. I mean, I could have had more. So I know that within we had a lot of activity with that and interest. But unfortunately, outside, we're also using this as a recruiting tool because we are just unable to find, you know, fully trained e-techs and general maintenance in this area. So.
And how's the response been to you when you are using that externally? What kind of candidates are you looking for there in terms of, you know, obviously you're not expecting them to come with a ton of experience, but do you still require some experience, or what are your parameters?
Yes, some kind of experience. It may not have to be, you know, heavy industrial, but at least some kind of maybe you know, some kind of, for example, I have you know, machine operating, which are many of the qualities that our internal candidates have, or maybe auto mechanic or diesel mechanic, or something that has to do with taking things apart and understanding how motors and engines and valves and things like that go for our particular industry. So that's kind of how we would, because again, we were able to get ours all internally, and then what we did was we backfilled with entry-level production employees.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, Harold, we can also pose that question. We can send that out to all of our participating companies to see if anybody else has some best practices and look at that as a future topic. That's a good suggestion.
Right, and that's basically a lot of the suggestions that she came up with are ones that we use also, and even for the tool and die, if somebody can do, like you say, the hands-on stuff, the automotive or the repair person, I'm telling you what, that's what we look for bringing somebody in from the outside, without a doubt, just some basic mechanical ability. I know the other day I saw about a 12-year-old boy, his mini bike broke the chain fell off his mini bike, and he knew what it was and he put it back on. I wanted to bring him on as an apprentice. That's one of the things, you know, that just to have somebody that knows something. So I know how everybody feels about trying to get new people involved in stuff like this.
Yep. Other suggestions for future topics? Think about this and get back to Vicki or Sue with future suggestions. But just in general, I'd love to hear back from you if you guys have some initial feedback. Is this a valuable use of your time? Are there I think Vicki was thinking about doing this every other month. This is our first go at it, and we chose the topic. But with this, do you think there'd be value in having this network of apprenticeship users get together on some regular interval?
I
feel it would be beneficial. This is Harold again.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's beneficial.
Yes, this is Sherry. I definitely think so.
Okay, great. Well, I'll turn this back over to Vicki with to give us some parting thoughts here. But definitely, then we're happy to do it, and we'll look for that feedback. And maybe it's a topic you're curious about, or a question you have, or maybe it's actually a success that you've experienced that you feel like will be beneficial to others. So if you can just be thinking about, how to take your experience and either learn from the challenges or learn from the successes and feed that back to us, that'd help us for planning the next one. Vicki, I'll turn it back over to you for any other next steps.
Thanks, Jessica. I know that what happens typically after these webinars is that you'll think of things that you wish you had asked. So please, if you think of anything that has to do with the tracking, or you need some samples or examples, this is part of what we're trying to build here as well. It's a nice network of all of you being able to work together to share experiences and best practices. So please don't hesitate to reach out so that we can help you along so that you can be successful and your apprentices can be successful. So if you think of anything, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to find answers to your questions or connect you with somebody else who may be having some successes, because we know we do have some champions out there, and we know that they are typically open to talking to other employers to help them along with their apprenticeships as well. So I guess that's all that I had to say this morning, and I thank you all for your time. And again, if you have any other ideas on suggestions, please let us know. So this means that we'll talk again in January as a group, and it will be the second Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. And as Jessica said, we're going to keep them to this hour. And we know that, with your participation, that this is going to allow everybody to have some success with their apprenticeship program. So if there's nothing else, then I say thank you to all of you, and please reach out if you need us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.